Scaling without retention, it's like pouring water into a leaky bucket. You're never gonna see the full potential out of your business. So for those of you who are just tuning in to my first video, in the previous 3 videos, we covered a couple key things you need to know when it comes to scaling and spending money on Facebook ads. We covered the affluent patient psychology. How do they think? What are the things they value? We covered messaging and offers. We even broke down how to actually set up your campaigns and what type of campaigns you need to be running. If you haven't seen these videos, or maybe this is your first time watching a video of mine, I encourage you to go back, watch this series start to finish. Today, we're gonna dive directly into the metrics that matter, when to scale, and how to keep patients long-term, because it doesn't do you any good signing up a patient if they don't stay with you for months or even years. So let's dive right in. Part 4, scaling and retention. Most important thing is measuring success. You have to understand that marketing is just math. It's all about knowing the numbers. Before we take on a client, we financially model everything out. It's such a crazy thing to me that most agencies don't ever do the math. It's just like hitting a goal. Let's say you want to make $1 million a month in your business. Your average order value is, let's just say, $1,000. You need to sell 1,000 patients or clients to hit that $1 million per month. It's just math. With marketing, you have to really know your numbers. One of the most important measures is known as ROAS, also called return on ad spend. You've probably heard this term quite a bit. Now, why is this important? This number tells you exactly how much money you make per dollar you spend on advertising. For example, you might spend month 1, let's say 10K on ads, and that might generate, let's say, 30K return. You spent $10,000, you made $30,000 in sales. This would be considered a 3 times ROAS. One thing to consider, don't get caught up with just ROAS. It's a very flashy term. A lot of marketers will say, oh, we have a 7 times ROAS, or we get 11 times ROAS. It's like, how do you do that? How much are you spending, and how long can you hold that for? All those are sliding numbers. So depending on the market, depending on how much they spend, it's gonna factor that in. So generally what I've seen is like marketers that always rely on, oh, I get this kind of ROAS. They really don't have much consistency to that. They probably got it one time, but like how often are they getting that? Because that number fluctuates. And one thing to keep in mind is, let's look at these 2 scenarios here. We'll do a 7 times ROAS versus a 3 times ROAS. Now, if you said, which one do you want? If you're not sure of the other numbers that matter, you might say, I want a 7 times ROAS, which, great, that sounds good. But if we can only spend 10K, which yields 70K, that's not that much money. I'd rather have a 3 times ROAS where I can spend 100K and yield 300K. So don't get too caught up in vanity metrics like ROAS and CTRs. At the end of the day, you're only advertising for one thing. That's to make money. So you want to make sure you're focused on money and the right measures of success. Now that we know our ROAS, we additionally need to know what's our LTV, which is the lifetime value of a customer. Why is this so important? Well, because at the end of the day, we generally want them to spend more money with us as a business. For example, we might have a weight loss offer. Let's just say it's $400. Well, that's per month, or a TRT offer. Whatever the offer is, on average, how many times do they stay with you? For weight loss, we see about 4 to 6 months for telemedicine, 6 to 10 months for in-clinic, brick and mortars. So let's say 5 times. So in this case, your LTV of 400 at 5, let's say an average, split this number right down the middle, 400 per month times 5, that means you have an LTV of $2,000. So now, why is this number important? Well, now when we see that we have a $2,000 LTV, we know our ROAS, we know our LTV, now we can start financially modeling things much better. What I would do is try to figure out what my cost of acquisition is. Now, this is another number, cost of acquisition, also known as your CAC, very important number. It means how much you spent to how many patients you generated or how many clients you got. So in this case, this doesn't tell us, you can see here, the ROAS, we spent 10K here to yield $30,000 in revenue. This doesn't tell us our cost of acquisition because we don't know how many signups we got from that. So you have to know how many signups you got from that $30,000. What if you're a cosmetic surgeon, that could be one case for you. So then your cost of acquisition would be 10 grand for that one case. That would be a bad return on ad spend. Now, if you're a weight loss clinic and let's say your average order value is $300, let's say you're a weight loss clinic, you got 100 signups, that would mean you generated a $300 cost of acquisition. So let's say your sales for the month was 30K. It got you 100 signups. You would do 30K divided by 100, which equals $300. Now, these are just made up numbers here. So your cost of acquisition was $300. That's pretty bad, especially for like weight loss offers. But that doesn't mean that you can't make money, right? Like that doesn't mean it's completely a loss. We had some clients that were willing to spend upwards of $350 per patient. Well, because they understood this number. I'm cool with losing money month 1 on them. I'm cool with losing money month 2 on them because guess what happens? Month 3, I'm gonna make money. Month 4, I'm gonna make money. Month 5, I'm gonna make money. So essentially, when you look at it that way, you see that it's a money printing machine. So your cost of acquisition is very important. Generally what we see is we're around like 100 to like maybe high end 200 per sign up per patient. So we have measuring success. We need to know the ROAS, the LTV, the cost of acquisition, how much did we spend to acquire a patient? Because this is going to tell us how profitable we are and how soon we can be profitable. And then we also need to know the churn or retention rate. I like going by churn, which is simply percentage of people that dropped off. Now, all of these numbers are very important, and I'm gonna show you something that I do with all of my clients. We do the financial modeling before we even sign up a new client, because I need to know that if you hire me, I'm gonna make you money, because if I don't, I'm getting fired, and I don't like to get fired. I like to win and be the best. So this is on a call funnel. So this would be great if we're doing a synchronous business, meaning we have to meet one-on-one with a doctor or a provider or a patient coordinator or some person before I can give you my money, not a telehealth business. We have a telehealth model as well. This is going to be straight to purchase. This is an asynchronous business. Think of like an e-commerce business. It's 100% a marketing organization. There is no sales involved. So it doesn't matter what model we work with. We've helped clinics hit 7-figure months in both models. Either way, you still have to do the math. That's just simply math here. So now that we understand these numbers, you see right here, we've got our ad spend, which is $10,000 for the month. Well, we had a cost of acquisition of $100. So for every $100 we spent, we got 1 patient sign up. So now we can start doing math, right? This is why the cost of acquisition is so important. So $10,000 for the month, we got 100 signups. Those 100 signups spent an intro offer order of $464 per person. So that generated $46,000 in revenue. Now we had some fees, right? It doesn't, again, as I was saying here, you really need to know your profitability, because like in this case, if you're a cosmetic surgeon and you spent 10 grand for 1 patient, and then you have another 10 grand in surgery costs, and then all these other things, you only make 5 grand. Like that's not really worth it that much for you. And then you're gonna have a marketing agency and other things. Like it doesn't make sense. So it's very important to know these numbers. So this is why you need to do this up front. So you've got provider fees, you've got processing fees, you have cost of goods, how much did the medication cost, the shipping of it, all these other fees. So we add these up. Then you have my fee, $7,500. So at the end of the month, we spent 10 grand, we generated $46,000 in revenue. Well, we have a net profit of $11,000. Well, now that's pretty much house money. So now next month, guess what? We can spend the same amount of money and assume the same things. So 100 patient signups at $100 still. But what happened is we had a churn. So this is where churn came in. Remember, month 1, we got these 100 signups here. So month 1, we got the 100 signups. We have a 15% churn, meaning 15% of our patients drop off every single month. That's here. Okay, so that means 15 from month 1 dropped off. Well, So we have recurring patients now because we're in month 2, we have 85 recurring patients. Well, we also signed up the 100 new ones. So our total per month is 185 going into month 2. We have the same price point. We're just running, these are just model numbers, right? We're gonna do exactly numbers for yours, but this is what you would need to do. So we have our monthly package, the average AOV, average order value. That's another number that we'll put here. AOV, which is the average order value, which is simply the revenue over the transactions. Doesn't matter if it's like 10 transactions for one customer, one transaction for another. It doesn't matter how many transactions per customer. You can do this off of any time frame too. The longer the time frame, the more accurate this is gonna be. Now, if you change offers and business models, right, I would try to consolidate it to like when those were running. So let's say we're just doing the numbers from the start of the year till now, because that's when we launched all of our new pricing. So January till now, we made $1 million in revenue, and we had, I'm just gonna throw a random number, 457 orders. So that means our AOV is, I'm gonna write that down here, $2,188. All right, so I would consider that a high ticket order. That would be something maybe realistic for like a med spa. Most healthcare clinics aren't going to be like that. Theirs would be closer to like, I think our average for our telehealth clinics is about $373 is the average that we see for telehealth. So the AOV is important. This is generally the number that I like to put here when I'm doing the financial models if we know it. Otherwise, we'll just run it off of what offer we're running traffic for. I digressed a little bit, but I thought that was important for you guys to know the AOV as well. So 185 times 464, we generated $85,000 this month. Well, we still have the provider fees. We still have the processing fees. We still have our cost of goods sold, and you still have to pay me to do my job. But we had the carryover. So we got $20,000. Well, now what happens is month 3, we're like, hey, Daniel, like we're seeing consistent numbers. Let's start scaling. Generally, we want to scale much faster, but let's say, you're scared to put your balls on the table and you're scared to put money down. So you do it month 3. You finally say, you know what, Daniel actually knows his stuff. I'm going to put some money into this. I'm going to take that 20 grand that I made and I'm going to pump that into the 10 grand, combine that with the 10 grand that I was initially going to spend. So now this month I'm putting $30,000 in advertising. So let's assume the same acquisition cost. We got 300 signups. Well, we still have that 15% churn. So, but that's on 185 patients here. So now that left over 157 from month 1 and 2 that came to month 3. And then we got 300 signups because we spent $30,000. So 157 plus the 300 gives us 457. Now our intro offer, same price, generated $212,000. We still have all the other fees. We still have that. And then you still have to pay me. And this leaves a net profit of $57,000. Disregard these numbers here at the bottom right. So that leaves our net profit. This is how we financially model out what you guys need to spend, because what would happen is if I let you say, oh, well, I only feel comfortable spending $5,000 for a month. Well, guess what would happen? Half of your sales wouldn't generate from month 1. You would still have to pay me my retainer. And then guess what would happen? You would actually lose money month 1. You would be like, Daniel, I'm not making money because me as the marketer didn't do the math. So this is what you need to do. And this is why we have higher retainers, because we want to make sure we're doing all the work and we're able to cover our costs. The last position I want to be in, and any marketer wants to be in, is like, I'm not making you money. So that's where it's very important doing the math. Now, call funnel, same thing, no different. Like a call funnel or an appointment funnel, meaning we're scheduling appointments to meet with somebody. So this is for a high ticket offer for a device. Actually, yeah, I just ran this one. So they're spending 20 grand month 1 in ads, small budget. They've been averaging a cost per call of about $250. So I just ran all their numbers. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to beat all these because, yeah, I just know like the numbers that they were doing was really off. But $250 cost per call, they're going to get 80 at $20,000. 60% show rate, pretty standard on those calls that we generated from ads. It's going to be 48 of them actually show. Of those 48, historically, they've had a 4% sales close rate, very low, but that's their close rate that they had for the last 18 months. Now they're selling very high tickets, so they make up for it. So they got off $20,000, a little over 2 signups at $52,000 for their high ticket offer that generated $101,000 ROI in revenue, not ROI. Now they have an agency fee, they have a commission fee to the rep, they have cost of goods sold, they have consumable costs, they have marketing costs, and they have supplement costs. So their net profit month one, about 50 grand. So this is, you can see it's very important to know these numbers, because you have to know what you're measuring success for. So you're going to measure success with your ROAS, your LTV, your cost of acquisition, your churn, and your AOV. These are absolutely essential numbers for you to really start spending money confidently in your advertising campaigns. So section 2 of this, when to scale. Now that we have the numbers, we know when to scale. Going back here, I calculated all the numbers out. So now I know in this case, we essentially got, like, if you want to base it off the profit, like a 2.5 times return on ad spend, or just base it off of per dollar I spent, 20,000 here and $101,000 in revenue generated, total cash collected, that'd be roughly a 5 times return on investment. So you have to know the numbers though, because if you don't, you're going to be spending and not making any money. And I see it all the time. Like a business, they were getting like 60 signups a month on average for their offer, but they weren't making any money because they were doing a discounted promo. So they were hoping that they would stay month 2, 3, 4, 5. But what happened is they were attracting a bunch of brokies, a bunch of poor people, because it was like a crazy discounted offer. And then the poor people couldn't afford to stay month 2, 3, and 4. And I see this far too common. It's crazy. And so then they drop off and they're actually at a loss because they paid out of pocket to acquire that customer. They paid all the costs of, the consumables, the service providers, the prescription, and then they're at like negative $15 for month 1, hoping that they'll stay month 2, and then they don't stay month 2. So they actually lost $15 every patient that signed up, and you never want to be in that position. So when to scale, as long as you're profiting, we want to be scaling, anything that's like 2 to 3 times ROAS or higher. This is very important to note. Again, a lot of businesses will get caught up here and they might say, well, Daniel, we want a 7 times ROAS, and they're going to get stuck making 70 grand a month, where the clients that care more about profit, let's assume that all of our campaigns, because most of our campaigns are around a 50%. Let's assume our campaigns are at 50% just for easy numbers. Meaning every dollar you collect, 50% of that goes toward the costs. So if I collect $1,000, roughly $500 went to providers, prescriptions, whatever it was. So roughly 50% is generally what we see. Some businesses might be, smaller, like for very high ticket things. You might have a smaller margin, but let's just assume a 50% margin. So at a 2 times return on ad spend, like you're pretty much at a break even. So I would want to be at least like a 3 times ROAS. But as long as we're making money, that's where you can really run the ROAS off of the profitability. So how much profit was made. So aside from the 2 to 3 times ROAS, you also need to factor in when to scale the backend systems, which is going to be your operations, your sales, we'll say fulfillment, right? Like I think the most signups we got in a day for one of our clients was 1,200 patient sign up. Most businesses like literally could not handle that. So what does the backend look like? I've let go of clients because they couldn't scale their sales teams fast enough, because for me as a performance marketer, I get paid again on this net revenue. So I'm going to do the math. I'm going to see, okay, we're spending this much. Here's how many calls we're going to get. How many salespeople do you have? How fast can you hire salespeople? And if those numbers don't make sense for me, which is going to put us here, like I don't start making money until you're profiting 100 grand or more. That's when you start paying me money, because that's the performance model, how we run. So I need to look at what that is. Cost per call, 250 at 30,000 ad spend, you're going to get 120 calls. Well, divide that by 22 days in the month, working days, that's about 5 calls per day. And your calls take, let's say they're 2 hours appointments. So you would need like a little over one salesperson for that. So we just do the math. If the call's an hour, right, that one salesperson could handle that. But I want to double. I'm not happy with you only profiting 150. I want to get you to $1 million in profit. I want you to pay me $100,000. So now when we do this, you're going to have multiple reps. These are the numbers that I want to see. It's just doing the math. So now we can see exactly what milestones we need to hit in order to start scaling. So you need to know operations, how many appointments you can handle, how many calls you can handle, how many shipments you can make, how many pharmacies you need to ship out all these orders, sales if you have a sales team, all the fulfillment. And additionally, I would say how much to scale. You can't just go from, okay, like for example, let's say we spend 10 grand month one, we get a 3 times ROAS. You made $30,000. You don't just go from 10 grand to 20 grand, because what happens is the algorithm is going to be reset. You have to scale at 10 to 20% per day. Anything more, you're going to reset the learning. So you launch a campaign, it kind of sends out this like balloon or this like shock wave, and it just goes out and it's forever in this direction. As long as you spend at 10 to 20% per day, or increase at 10 to 20% per day, it's going to continue going in that direction. So what happens is most marketers, or some marketers, they'll go, okay, we're winning, like we're getting, for example, like $50 acquisition cost. Let's say we're doing a $300 weight loss order. It only costs us $50. Our hard costs are $50. So we're spending $100 and getting a new patient. This is like a money printing machine. These are the campaigns we like to launch. We want to spend more money because for every $100, $50 we put in the ads, we get $300 back. Like, who wouldn't want more money? So they go from, let's just assume they're spending like $100,000 a month, which would be $3,000, a little over $3,000 a day, and they're like, we hit the gold mine here. Let's jump this up to $6,000. Let's double it up. Now the algorithm that was going out, it's as if you're launching a new campaign. But you can take that 100 grand, the 3,000 a day, increase it by 10%, so 3,300. Then increase that by 10%, which would be like 36, 33, and then that by 10%. And you do that every day. That number compounds very rapidly. You can scale budgets very aggressively at a 10 to 20% per day. So when do you stop scaling, or when do you hit a wall? Well, when the numbers don't make sense, when you're no longer making money, when you scale and your costs of acquisition start going up. So that's when you're gonna want to adjust your scaling. But just because, can you scale more aggressively than this? Yes, but I don't encourage it. I guess if you had to spend a certain amount of money, you can technically do that, but you run a lot more risk of just like doubling this up. So that's how I like to scale these. So what would this look like? Let's just say we're taking over a new account. We're launching new ads. So we've got our campaign 1, and then in here, we've got ad set 1, ad set 2, ad set 3. We have 3 ad sets, and they all have different ads. Maybe they're different creators, and they're all in this ad. And we're doing ABO because we're testing. So meaning ABO it's spending on the ad set level. So this ad set, let's say, is getting $175 CAC. This ad set getting a $37 CAC, and this ad set is getting $100 CAC. And we need our cost of acquisition. Let's say we did the math. We need here, we figured out how much our shipping costs are, all of our costs are, and we figured out we need our cost of acquisition to be $100 or less. So this would never, if we were running this would never get to 175. We'd cut it before. But essentially what we would do is we'd let it run. And some people actually let things run a little bit longer to see if like we get more conversions and it drops down. But essentially we have one campaign, has these 3 ad sets in it, and here's the numbers that we got. Well, we're gonna immediately cut this campaign, and we're gonna cut this campaign. So previously on the campaign, let's just say we're starting from scratch, so we did $100 a day. Now we found this winner. This one, ad set 2, is winning. So you could, again, as I said, you can scale more aggressively and assume, okay, well, if we just double this, we should stay there, but there is a risk. So what we do is we scale it at 10%. So now we go from 100 to 110 and so on, 10%, increase, 10% increase. And then we keep going to 10% increases until we pretty much see diminishing returns. And then what we'll do is we'll launch new creatives. So we'll launch now a test creative. Let's say ad set 1 and ad set 3 that didn't do it. Maybe they didn't get a true test because like we can change the copy. So we want to now let these go head to head against themselves. And we'll do the same thing. So we're constantly running all these different tests. So that's how you're going to scale. Now that we know our numbers, we know how much we can spend, we know when to scale. This is all on the front end stuff. Well, how do we increase the revenue that we're driving? These are going to be more retention strategies that we can deploy aside from, split testing new audiences, split testing new creatives, all of those things. How do we retain more? How do we get more money per person that we sign up? Emails are going to be great for this. Every lead we get, every opt-in, every sign up, every abandoned checkouts, people who might have filled out the survey but didn't end up putting in their card information. These are easy wins, easy opportunities to collect some extra money. So for emails, we have 3 types that we send out. Broadcast. These are going to be like one-off emails that you send to your entire list. Let's say, for example, 4th of July was around. So 4th of July special. This is going to be a broadcast, one-off emails. Then you have your automated sequences. These you're going to want to build out in advance. We're launching a brand new campaign. So we're building out sequences for our opt-in, for our abandoned checkouts, for all of our leads, for if they buy certain products, they're going to get sent these automated sequences. So we're building out automated sequences based off of where they're at in the pipeline. And then we have some behavioral. This is the 3rd type. I can't write tonight. Behavioral sequences. So these are going to be based off of certain behaviors that happen. So, hey, you bought this particular item. For example, you might have bought a weight loss injection. Well, a lot of people who lose weight, they also struggle with muscle. We recommend you getting on our Samoralin, right? This is going to be behavioral type stuff. For example, like this clothing company Cuts, this is my favorite one. I bought something. They sent me an email that says, hey, you bought this shirt. This goes great with this. Check out these other fits because you bought this. This would match great with those shirts that you buy, right? So these are going to be behavioral things. These are the 3 types of emails that you're going to want to set up and dial in. These you can squeeze a lot of extra revenue out of your email marketing, which you're going to do for anybody that's done business with you, anybody who's thought about doing business with you. This is how you're going to retain and make a lot more money. Now, we're big fans of what we would call for emails, value dense emails. I got hit with a med spa email that I signed up for. I went to the med spa, got some IVs done, and they hit me with an email, and it was just like the lamest email ever. It was like, oh my God, we miss you so much. Here's 15% off. It just screamed like, I'm so desperate. I just want your money. And there was like no real like value added to this. Could you imagine like the difference in impact that it has? Like, let's say you go into a med spa for a facial or a hydrofacial for acne or something. Instead of just shooting out these random discount emails, which, don't get me wrong, you can obviously like generate some revenue doing that, but imagine providing more value instead of just being desperate and asking for a sale always and saying, hey, here's the 3 top treatments for acne, lasers, whatever types of treatments that you guys use for acne scarring. Here's the 3 top treatments for acne scarring. And by the way, if you're interested in any of these or learning more, here's the link to book a call with somebody on our team, right? Providing so much more value, you're going to get way more people to actually engage with you, want to do business with you, and you might not convert them today. But guess what happens? Like every time you just send them a blast for a discount, they're eventually going to opt out, unsubscribe, or put you in spam. But when you provide value and you continue to provide value, now they're selling themselves on why they should do business with you, and you don't have to rely on a discount to generate that sale. So value dense emails, very important. If you need help, we can help you craft those. And then the other areas that you can really make a lot of extra money on retention is going to be what we call upsells and cross sells. So an upsell would be like, I sign up for a monthly weight loss, it's $199, or for the first month, then it goes up to, let's say, like $299. So the average is $300 per month. Or you can buy a quarterly plan for $600. So if instead of spending the one time and then paying more over 3 months, I end up spending more money than just buying the quarterly plan. That would be considered an upsell. A cross-sell is going to be like selling them something different that they didn't sell. For example, I signed up for weight loss. A lot of people struggle with muscle loss, muscle atrophy when they get on these. You want to make sure that you don't experience that. So we recommend, getting on Semoralin or some other muscle building peptide that's going to help you gain muscle mass so that you don't lose it from the weight loss. That's what we would consider a cross-sell. So the big picture here, scaling gets you more patients. Very important. This is what we focus on. This is generally what we get hired for, is scaling. But at the end of the day, if I can get somebody to spend like, AOV, let's say $199 on an intro offer, but now with our upselling or our cross-selling, now we can take 10 to 15%. And generally for these, we see anywhere from like 7 to 12% is pretty standard for like an upsell or cross-sell. Sometimes you might get much higher than that depending on the offer, but 7 to 12%, that's massive, right? Let's just say 10%. If we can get 10% of every order, so 10 out of 100 people to now spend an extra $400, right? That's $4,000 of additional revenue that we generated off of those people. Like that adds up very fast. Now you can take that extra $4,000, all right, instead of spending $10,000 month 2, again, the same amount, going from 10,000 to 10,000, spending the same amount. Now you have $4,000 of extra revenue. You can see like those percentages, they really add up. So scaling gets you more patients, but retention turns them into long-term revenue. And that's exactly how, these big businesses that we worked with were able to scale. And you're only able to do this with a comprehensive strategy like that. So if you want to hire me, knock out that application below. If you got questions, drop them in the comments or hit me up on Instagram. I'd prefer you drop them in the comment if it's a question about like how to set things up or what to do. Do not ask me for that stuff. I will refer you to my coaching program if you have questions, and hit me up on Instagram. But if you have questions, drop them below and I will answer them publicly so that other people can learn. If you have questions that you want me to answer privately, again, you need to sign up or hire me for coaching or consulting, something like that. But I hope these help you reframe how you look at things. And if they are, drop a comment, say, hey, like this was super helpful, so that I at least know that this is helpful and insightful. And looking forward to seeing you guys in the next video.